Let's get spooky. This is our station Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen.
Alrighty, and welcome to the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror. Introducing our haunted host, we have Ms. Lisa.
Hello, groovy ghoulies.
We have our wonderful Karen.
I'm a horrorholic.
And I am Shannon. We are excited. Today we're going to be doing a book review of the 2020 book, The Only Good Indians, written by Stephen Graham Jones. We are pretty excited about this one, so let's get spooky.
Hey Horrorholics, it's Shannon. Earth Station Boo has just launched its brand new merch store. It's time to get your hands on some killer gear. From our fun logo shirts, cozy hoodies, Let's Get Spooky stickers, and Horrorholics Anonymous totes, there's something for every one of our lovely little ghouls. We offer our spooky designs on many different types of products to fit your desires. But if you happen to see a missed opportunity, just let us know. And unlike most of Stephen King's adaptations, you know what I'm talking about, you won't be disappointed with the quality of the products. Head over to our link tree in our bio, grab your merch, show off your favorite horror podcast, and most of all, let's get spooky.
Alrighty, so before we dive into this book, we do want to give a few different warnings. A lot of people do not know what this book is about. So we want to make sure that if it's something that could be a little on the triggering side for you, you kind of can get a heads up on a few things, including the type of language that we are probably going to be using in this podcast. Based on how the book was written, we will be referring to the individuals that are in this book as natives, because that was the language that was used in the book, and we felt that was the best way to be respectful to both the author as well as this group of individuals. We also want you guys to know there is going to be mention of animal violence, violence against women, and so please be mindful if those are things that are triggering to you or can cause you to have any reactions. You may want to not listen to this episode. But we would love to hear from you anyways. But we'll talk to you guys at the end about that. Okay? But let's go ahead and get in and get started. Ladies, what is your initial thoughts on this book? Lisa? I know you had a lot that you wanted to talk about, so
Oh yeah.
First.
Well, being that we have a lot of native culture around here in Colorado, I really, really do. I kind of like the pace of it just a little bit. It was a little scattered in some places, but it was good storytelling, and I got really sucked in. I liked it. I think it's a good lesson type. The way the storytelling was, it kind of like, I don't know how to. It was just, I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Okay. Karen, how about you?
I really did not enjoy this book, and I'm a big reader. And I don't know if it was like the storytelling portion or the pacing. I read it. I tried to get into it. I picked it up, put it down, picked it up, putting down, and I just, as a lover of different cultures, I tried. Like, I understood the story. I understood, the horror aspect of what was happening. I just did not enjoy the book.
That's fair. That is fair. I'm kind of in the middle between you two. There were aspects of this book that I thoroughly enjoyed. There were parts of it where I was like, "Oh my God, yes, that's amazing." I loved this section of the book. And then there's one section of the book, I don't know if I just like disassociated when I was consuming it or what, but next thing I know, I'm like almost done with the book and I'm like, what just happened? I mean, okay. And just kept going because I'm like, I need to finish reading this, but um, parts of it were a little less entertaining than other parts of it. I will say that. Um, this book hits a lot of topics that I think are not just specific to the Native culture, but are very influential in the Native culture. There was talks of alcoholism, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily just a Native problem, but it is a heavy problem for the Native community. There was violence against each other, against themselves, um, from white men and them. And it was, again, it's not that it's only this community that has this issue, but it is a huge issue for this community. So it was interesting to see it from a perspective of, okay, I can see and understand what is going on here because it is something that anybody can experience, but it is interesting to see how it was taken to heart by those
Right.
individuals
Yes.
and how it specifically was impacting them and the cycle upon which it was impacting them. Which kind of goes into talking about things that we've learned from this book, because this is a book that can enlighten us into a culture that is not our own. Um, I know somebody who is not native but lives in an area that does have a native community. It is interesting to learn these different aspects and to learn the history that they have with the land and with the area. And I found that this book was kind of interesting considering that it is more of a Western United States and I'm very much East Coast. So it's kind of interesting to see the duality there. What were some things that y'all learned from this book? Karen?
The resourcefulness that, these men went through to hunt these elk. I mean, you have to think, if you're trying to bring home, meat for your family. But in a way, I was kind of upset that they like, unloaded
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Yeah.
bullets, killing 9 elk.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of meat that's going to go to waste.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you weren't really thinking about that, were you? Because for me, traditionally speaking, as someone whose mother came from a poor village, every single part of the animal gets used. And also, I've learned that and
Yeah.
also in the native, culture. But these 4 men just laid waste to a whole herd,
Mm-hmm.
and they, left the meat there. But for the resourcefulness, it's like they have to like use what they can because they don't have new cars, don't have new trucks. They have to cobble together stuff to make it work, which is very, sad because as someone who, has the privilege to live the life I live, to see someone else struggle, especially since, their land was taken away from them and also gifted back to them because they now live in these reservations and whatnot, but they don't have the resources to actually truly survive. But so they have to become resourceful in how they, live. And
Mm-hmm.
half the time, that resourcefulness kills them
Yeah.
because they get too bogged down with stress and whatnot. And, alcoholism runs very, very rampant in some of these individuals. And it kind of harked onto my family because my family, on my dad's side and my mom's side, we were bootleggers and moonshiners. So alcoholism ran high. And so, but you had to do what you got to do to like,
Mm-hmm.
survive. And poor Ricky, he did what he had to do to survive. He left the, um, reservation. I think he stole his uncle's guns, if I remember
Mm-hmm.
correctly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Stole the whole closet full.
Yep.
that's a lot of guns. That's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
guns.
Yeah, it is.
But that's resourcefulness because he knew that he could sell them, to
Mm-hmm.
make money to get to where he was going.
Yep.
For Lewis, he left the reservation as well because he wanted to make a better life for himself and got
Mm-hmm.
himself a job.
Yeah.
Resourcefulness. For
Mhm.
Gabe and Cassidy, they still stayed on the res,
Mm-hmm.
but they still survived using their knowledge to survive on the res, to live their life on the res.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I got from it is the resourcefulness of these individuals to survive, if you could call it surviving. And also, looking at different, even though this was an eco horror, I also thought it was a folk horror too.
Mhm.
Very much.
Very much.
Because I don't think I could see like, animals coming back just to haunt me. Really, because if that's the case, a lot of us would be dead. I
Es-
mean,
Especially if the elk is deciding to go after the next of kin.
Yeah.
mhm. I was like,
Mhm.
You
wait a
know.
minute, you killed us.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know how many deer people have killed and
Mm.
rabbits and squirrels just to
Yeah.
eat. We'd be
Yeah.
haunted with a lot of animals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Lisa, how about you? What did you get to learn from this book?
I learned that, the resourcefulness, of course. I also learned about how these four individuals seem to be caught between a rock and a hard place. They want to keep their traditions and they have that guilt and everything, but then they want to kind of go into the modern world. And I think it keeps them in this eternal loop of feeling guilty because it's like they're leaving the stuff that's natural to them behind to make it better. I did when they went and they shot all those elk. It was like young men who should have known better because that was the elders' land. And then they felt guilty when they had to waste all that meat after a while, and it just kind of haunted them
Yeah.
because in the back of their heads, they kind of knew there were going to be some kind of consequences. They just, and it's kind of amazing that it's like they want to learn their culture, but they don't want to keep it. I don't know. It was just, I felt like I was in a juxtaposition, and that's what I kind of.
I mean, it was more of Gabe wanting to like only take the hindquarters of them all, while
Mhm.
Lewis was like, we need to take, as much as we can get, not just the hindquarters, but with his accident,
Yeah.
his little
Yeah.
but I also
Lewis's specific kill.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like you saw that there was honor in it because he's like, no, I'm going to use all of you. I am so sorry that I did this. He
yeah,
had that immediate
Mm.
remorse
yeah,
and that immediate like, no, I'm going to do this the right way, where I'm
yeah.
going to use all of you. You're not going to be put to waste. And the
And
fact
then
that he
there's
went back to go do that to make
Mhm.
sure that it was done.
and then I was really mad at the game warden, Denny.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I was like,
I
you
was
gonna let these
mad.
Yeah.
you gonna let these men throw away this meat? It's like as a person, I'd be like, you know what? You did bad, but I'm gonna punish you. But we're gonna get this meat and take it back to the res, take it back to the
Hmm.
families, make sure they have
Mhm.
food for the winter, and then I'll come
Yeah.
up with a punishment for you.
Right.
Yeah. When
Because
in situations like that, that's where I was like, I think bothered me the most about
Exactly.
specifically the slaughtering, specifically that slaughtering, that massacre, the elk massacre is what they call it in the book, was his no, you need to go throw it back on the ground. Go toss it over that ridge,
Yeah.
let it fall on the ground, and you're gonna leave it there. That well, first of all, obviously Denny's not a native
Right.
because he would not have done that.
Mhm.
As a native, he would have been like, no, okay, you're going to go give it to all the elders and they're going to do with it what they want because it was on their land. But why? There's like a part of me goes, why would you waste it? Why would you not take it
I
and
know.
use it for the community? Be
yeah,
like, okay, this is going to the shelter and this is going to feed the shelter for the next 6 months because guess what? Y'all don't deserve to keep it.
it's
I
like
mean, even with Lewis sitting there going, hey, can we at least keep this one? Can we at
Right.
least like use all of this one. There was already begging for there to be the correct thing being done. And that's where I was like, you motherfucker. Like, come
Exactly.
on.
So if I was like, Danny, like I would have said, you know what? Let me call the elders. Let's get some of the young folks. Let's get these trucks here. Let's take this meat and fill like the people's, freezers. Because I'm thinking like, with the reservation, how often do they go out to get all do they have a supermarket on the
Hmm.
res?
Yeah.
Do they have markets
Hmm.
that,
They
provides
do.
what they need?
They do.
But but still at the same time, I'm like, we were wasting meat, Denny.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. That's
Exactly.
why I'm like, Homeboy is obviously not.
Yeah. He made me mad when he did that. I was like,
Yeah. And even as a game warden, you wouldn't want to do that because all that's going to do is bring predators to that spot.
Yeah.
And no, like
exactly.
it there's so much there that I'm like, that does not make any logical sense whatsoever for him to do what he did. Not a
No,
single piece of it.
Nope.
not one.
Not a single piece. It's just one of those like you just like you're speechless. You're just absolutely speechless.
Exactly.
I will say this though, I did enjoy understanding the folklore almost of native cultures. And even though this tribe that specifically is in here, which is the Blackfeet or Blackfoot tribe, there are so many similarities between them and other tribes throughout North America that I think it is interesting what similarities they do have and how so many of them do have a deep respect for nature,
Oh
where
yeah.
there is that soul to an animal that you have to respect. And the fact
Mhm.
that I feel like this book was almost like a when you don't respect it, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It does.
I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely.
we
I mean, the
this
elk
is
woman.
this is an eco horror. This is the environment coming back and having its say and having its vengeance on those who do not take care of it.
Right?
I mean, for me, it was kind of upsetting that it came after Lewis because he tried
Hmm.
his best. Like, you
Yeah,
know what? You put in effort. You put in effort. Your friends, on the other hand, going
yeah,
after them.
Yeah.
I'm going to go after them.
yeah. I mean, he was definitely not innocent in the situation at all,
No.
No, he wasn't. But
but he was the least harmful
Right.
and least disrespectful of the entire situation.
yeah,
Speaking of
I
which,
have to say, poor Ricky. You only got a chapter of him. That was
Yeah,
bad.
I know, right?
but you know what? I feel like Ricky was just another note for Cass and Gabe.
Hmm.
I think he would have been on the same note. I think Lewis was really the only one who was mindset wise different than the
Hmm.
other two, in my opinion. Like,
It also it shows that it's just like another native that dies at the hands of the white patrons of the bar. Because he
yeah.
Right.
even said it in like the first chapter, Indian, beaten to death in front of a bar.
Hmm. Well, I
Um,
actually think it was interesting. All of them at one point in time said, the news is just going to say
yeah.
dot, dot, dot,
Yeah,
dot, and insert whatever
exactly.
the situation was that they were in and how it would
Mhm.
have looked to other individuals in that situation. I really do think that that was interesting how each one of them at some point said that, if not once, but multiple times.
Oh yeah,
I
Yeah.
know
multiple
Lewis
times.
said it multiple times.
And it's like, it shows that you with the title of the book, The Only Good Indian, and you know what the rest of it is. The
Hmm.
Yes.
only good Indian
Yeah.
is a dead Indian.
Yep.
And so they all ended up
Which is
dying.
definitely not something that we all agree with.
No.
No, we do not.
um, Yeah, that was, I think it was very telling how how Stephen titled this and how it connects to how things are interacted and perceived when it comes to the native population.
Right.
Okay, so speaking of the elk lady, this beautiful, vengeful creature is coming in, and it is the elk who Lewis is the one who's responsible of killing and ripping her baby from her and leaving her baby basically buried alive. Um, it's basically her coming back and taking revenge for what they've done to her and her child and her family. And how that spirit comes in and continually wreaks havoc on the entire life of all of these men. Because
Hmm.
it started with Ricky in the first one. That
Yep.
elk that he saw was the elk from there. And then you go into Lewis, and I do think it is interesting that his coworker at the post office, who is named Shawnee in the book, is the same name of a tribe that does hold elk in very high regards. Even though she in the book is part of the Crow Nation, Shawnee is a tribe, as well as Cree and Lakota that have great esteem for elk. Which honestly, we as just human beings should have esteem for elk because they are gorgeous creatures. In North America, they're the second largest
Yeah, they're
deer-like
pretty big.
creature. They're massive. Um, but it's interesting how these creatures went from not just being a symbol or part of traditions or anything like that, but they became a teacher, an avenger, how they just they did not lie with this horribleness that kind of came about from this massacre. How did the elk affect y'all in this story? Lisa?
Oh, well, I definitely have. I mean, I've always had a respect for them being a wildlife photographer and everything, but I look at them differently now, and especially because it is elk season here, so they're all over the place, and you hear them all over the place. I I think of them more as like magical now, I guess, and they can be very aggressive creatures. They really can. So I could see how she would embody her revenge. I've seen some of the elk chase people. So yeah, but I've gained even more respect, and you're kind of creepy now a little bit too. But you know, it's really cool because I just now just basically treat them like not only majestic wildlife but like magical beings. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
sounds weird, but this just I don't know. It's just it gave me a second look at them as creatures in
I
wildlife.
believe that. That's fair. Ken, how about you?
I'd still see them as animals. I mean, yeah, they have a role in
You had the
life.
mic thing happen.
Okay, I just see them as animals. Yeah, they have a role in life. Um, I never really much cared for elk, really. It was just me. As a little kid, I actually liked moose better. I don't know why. I felt more akin to moose, maybe because they're huge and they will take out a car
Yes,
Yeah, they will.
yeah, they will. They're the
and they
size of
still
dinosaurs.
stand. They'll still stand there like, oh, you hit me. You're dead. Okay, I don't care.
Side note for the Moose Talk. I cannot wait for Moose Jaws to finally get made and into a film by Kevin Smith. But continue.
Moose jaws? Okay.
I'll tell you guys about
Yeah,
it later.
But yeah, like most animals I don't really think of as mystical or magical unless I'm akin to, like, I feel like a kinship to it. Like moose, I feel a kinship to moose. I believe that they are very majestic. Even though some people think they're ugly, I believe they're beautiful.
They're
Um,
adorable.
they're
yes, they
cute.
are. Um, but yeah, to me, it was just, another animal reaping revenge on that's coming to life, coming to spirit, coming to fruition to reap revenge on these four men for what happened 10 years ago, right before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yep.
Yep, leading up to Thanksgiving. So we've already mentioned that it's an eco horror. What do you guys think about this subgenre of horror and how this book has done with it?
I mean, it could, eco horror has its own little, like it is its own little subgenre.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
there are some really good eco horrors out there, and there's some really bad eco horrors out there. It just continues on, the storyline of what Mother Nature can do if you do not respect her, or just what Mother Nature could do because she's a bitch. I mean, look at the birds. Look at the birds. Like, why are the birds attacking? Nobody knows.
I
Um,
blame airplanes for that one. They were tired of those planes coming in and disrupting their flight plans.
and they has to get sucked up into the engine, like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's just for me, it's just another eco horror that could be either enjoyed or not enjoyed.
Okay. Lisa?
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of important nowadays to have a little bit more horror.
Mm-hmm.
I look back at a movie from like back in the 80s called Premonition, where we had all it turned to that weird bear thing that, anyway, ate people, but it was poisoned by mercury. So it was an ecological horror.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there are good eco horrors and there are bad, just like Karen said. I agree. But I think it's kind of cool when it's written by an indigenous person because it gives you more of a closeness to Mother Nature because
Mm-hmm.
they're close to Mother Nature, their culture is. So I think it means more. And I think I'd love to see more of them and read more of them. I mean, because I was asked one day, you like horror movies? And I'm like, yeah. Well, why are you always out in nature? And I'm like, well, it's just as unpredictable. You never know where, I mean, look, we almost got
And you're
ran
not a
into a,
one-page pony. Like
I know,
you
right?
can enjoy a number of different things.
Oh
We're
yeah,
complex
Exactly.
human beings.
Exactly. You
and
can't be in nature. Oh, sorry, Karen. Go ahead.
also you have your natural eco horror, and then you have your man made eco horror
Mm-hmm.
at that. Um,
Yeah.
so this one is kind of a natural and a man made eco horror where they made their own destiny by doing what they did.
Hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But
even
then nature was like, let's go ahead and take care of you.
yeah, like this one doesn't even have to be even further subgenre. Like this could just be straight eco horror. You know, mankind's hand in nature alone can cause all sorts of havoc.
Oh,
But
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
um, I do think it is important to have eco horror because again, horror is a reflection of reality. And right now, we are having a lot of ecological and environmental things going on in our world. Some of it is because we have not been doing a good job being stewards of the earth. But then there are
No,
times where it's just Mother Nature doing her own damn thing. She wants to do what she wants to do. It is not our business to tell her not to.
I mean they are trying to think about, like, bringing back the mammoth and the dodo bird. They're experimenting on that.
They're experimenting on a bunch of stuff.
I'm sorry. If things have gone away, if it has been in the last like year or two that the last of whatever has gone away, okay, maybe bring it back. I could see it possibly working. Maybe. However, individuals that have been gone for a very, 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 very long time are not going to have the correct prey and predator situation in order to have a maintained balance in the environment. Have we not
Exactly.
Eco
learned?
horror.
Have we not learned from real life eco horrors like, oh, I don't know, the kazoo that is rampant in the South in the US? You know, an invasive species that has no near real natural enemy. Hmm.
Hmm.
The kazoo.
Yeah, the plant.
Oh,
Mhm.
kudzu.
Kudzu.
Kudzu. I
Yeah,
heard kazoo. Like in like the
kudzu.
I was like,
No, kudzu.
Kudzu. Okay, cool.
Kudzu.
Yeah,
oh,
that stuff
But you
runs
knew what I
rampant.
meant.
yeah, yeah. I understand. I understand. I mean, as humans, we introduce things that should not be introduced in the environment. I mean,
Hmm.
Fire
yeah,
ant.
like the
Fire
kudzu.
ant.
Mm-hmm. The koi fish or goldfish up in
Yeah.
Lake
Yeah,
Michigan, the
Hmm.
yeah.
snakehead fish. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, there's a
Fire
lot
ants
of
weren't
animals.
supposed to be.
There are a lot of animals that are not where they're supposed to be because of us. But yeah, eco horror, it's important. And I think it's some of the best horror that you can write or even just make in general, because it is something that can be so easily created and done, and it is so realistic for for it all. There's actually quite a bit of horror that is considered eco horror, and I like it
Mhm.
personally. Um, Now this book does talk about womanhood, violence against women, specifically with this being a female elk. As kind of like a representation of some of the stuff that's been happening for Indigenous women. How do we feel as women when we read about a lot of that stuff? Because I know some of those topics can be kind of on the heavier side.
Some of them were a little triggering.
Hmm.
I will admit that because I've been into a situation myself. But um, I think it's important. It's an important message. It can be triggering, but it's an important message to let people kind of know that it really does happen,
Hmm.
and it's not just some made up thing. But yeah, it was a little triggering to me, so I had to put down the book a couple times, going, yeah.
Hmm.
So,
I
but
mean,
I thought it was a very important message.
especially where Lewis was like cutting open PETA,
Yeah,
Hmm.
pulling out the elk baby. Mm,
Yeah,
the teeth
wow.
looking for
where it was
ivory.
very much mirrored of what he had done
Yeah.
10 years
Yeah,
prior.
And
yeah.
only to realize that, oh, he just killed his own wife
Hmm.
because he was
Hmm.
slowly descending into madness because that's what she wanted.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
But violence against women do happen all the time. It's just not
Hmm.
you don't slowly descend into madness.
Right.
Yeah.
Just just let y'all know that. But yeah, it was kind of hard to read a little bit
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
because you hear horror stories about what happens in real life to women.
The stories from detectives who have handled domestic violence cases from reservations, from not reservations, will tell you some of the horror stories that they have come across.
Hmm.
And it's it's heartbreaking. And especially when you go and you read something like this that has stuff that is so so closely related to real life. And, you can easily pull up any true crime doc or true crime podcast and hear basically a similar story. And
Right.
it's just heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. I know a friend of mine who happens to be female as well, who read this, who is also of indigenous descent. Uh, she had said that it was extremely triggering for her and that she actually had to quit reading for a long time. Like it wasn't just like, oh, here, let me just put it down and I'll get back to it, tomorrow. Like she waited like over a month to pick the book back up because it hit a little too raw for her. I appreciate, though, the amount of trueness to what actually is a real experience for Native women that was in this to show that even though this is horrific and it is not easy to read, it is a reality.
Yep.
And again, horror it's a mirror. Horror shows what is truly horrific in the world. So
as women, we live a life of either, perfect contentment or horror. Because, as a woman, you don't want to tell a man no because you don't want to, end up dead.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, hey, let me get your number. Yeah, no. And then you end up shot.
Yeah. Or other things.
Or other things. So, the violence against the women in this book is horrific because it happens every day.
It's reality.
It's reality. It's like every 60 seconds or every 7 minutes, a woman is murdered or, raped or something like that. I forget the statistics, but you get more, women hurt and or killed than you do men.
Yeah.
Globally, an intimate partner violence globally is 25 to 38% of women experience it in their lifetime. That is in the US from ages 18 and older, over 5.3 million each year.
Wow.
Murder globally is 38% of all murders of women are committed by an intimate partner. 1 in 3 teen women experience dating violence each year. Yeah. So it's not an easy thing to live with. The CDC says that 1 in 4 women will experience physical violence by their intimate partner at some point during their lifetimes. 1 in 3 men will also experience, 1 in 3 women will also experience some form of sexual violence. So,
absolutely.
Which I'm going to take a moment right now. If you are someone who is experiencing domestic violence, there is a national phone number you guys can call, 1-800-799-SAFE. They are more than happy to help you guys out, and they have the resources needed. And that is for both men and women. This is not just a female issue. There are men who are also abused. We are just personally talking about women because of the story and our own personal experiences. But with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. Because it kind of hits anthology-likeness because there are 4 individual kind of story, or really 5 individual stories. We call it, if you consider Gabe's daughter a separate storyline. Which one was your favorite to read?
Like I said, the stories did not attract me.
But was there one that you liked slightly more than the others, or you thought had more promise than the others?
I would say I actually liked the whole interaction with Gabe and Cass or Cassidy, their story, because it shows how how easily people could turn on each other just for a misunderstanding or miscommunication.
Yeah.
And it happened because the elk head woman did that.
Yeah.
And Gabe thought, Cassidy killed his daughter, and the next he's getting beaten to death. And then he promised, like, if you save my daughter, you don't do anything to hurt her, I'll kill myself. myself. I give myself to you as tribune. So I actually like that interaction more with those two
Hmm.
than the separate stories.
Yeah. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Karen. The Gabe and the cast that it I don't know, it seemed to have a little bit more backstory and substance to me.
Hmm.
And Gabe was more honorable than most of them. I think so because he was trying to get back into the traditions and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it flowed a little bit better. I liked Lewis, right? Lewis.
Hmm.
I liked his a little bit,
Yeah.
but then it just got a little too much for me. It just got a little too scattered.
I liked Lewis. I think his was the more, I think it had the most like progression in storytelling from like being very like mundane, whatever, to the full on chaos that ended up being there. Were there things that made it not as smooth? Yes, definitely. I feel like as soon as his dog got like hung up kind of thing and Silas got bit, I feel like from that point on it became very scattered. But it seemed like Lewis himself was very scattered. So I'm wondering if the storytelling was based on the character's mindset, because it seemed like that's how a lot of the story was being told was from one character's kind of like almost point of view, but not quite.
Yeah.
The beginning of Cass and Gabe's stuff is where I kind of started to like disassociate a little bit. It wasn't until they got to the sweat lodge and started really having that conflict that I was able to re-engage with the story. For me personally, I do think Gabe wanting to get back to their native roots was kind of cool, but I think overall he was still kind of a garbage human being, and
It was.
Yeah.
just wasn't was kind of far behind everybody else when it came to progression and growth. I think Cass was a little bit further ahead of him, but not by much. And I think Rick was basically the same thing, except he got out of town instead of staying. Like, really, I feel like Rick, Cass, and Gabe were kind of almost the same characters. Just at some point, they picked a different door to go down. Like if you're like, building a video game where it's based on your choices, like you all start at the same point, but based on your choices, you take a different path. They picked too many similar choices. They just picked like one thing off, and that's how they were different, in my opinion. That's how I perceived them all. I will say this though, I do think it was heartbreaking that both Cass and Gabe lost people from their perspective, lost people who they loved so truly. Like Cass losing Joe. Like,
yeah,
you could tell he was obviously madly in love with her. And then Gabe thinking he lost his daughter, whom you can tell he was extremely proud of. Like, you can see the fact that they lost something weighed so heavily on them. And so, I do think that's what makes them a little bit more than Rick. Because Rick didn't really have anything.
Well, in a way, Rick was kind of like them because he did lose his brother Cheeto.
Cheeto, yeah.
Cheeto, yeah. But
But
he wasn't there.
yeah, but he wasn't there. He didn't experience that pain, that hurt.
Right.
And he didn't go back.
That made me
Both
mad.
Cass and Gabe would have gone back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cass and Gabe would have, well, one, I don't think they would have left that
Right.
person the way that Rick did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
I was
think
like, that's your brother, man. Go back. Go to his
Yeah.
funeral.
like if this was to be turned into like a TV series, I would be very interested in Lewis's storyline. I
Yeah.
don't think I'd be interested really anybody else's. It would be like, okay, maybe based on like sub characters that go along with each individual one, like Gabe's daughter, that would be kind of a cool thing. I think Nathan was with Cass and Joe. Like, okay, give me all that, but you know,
Yeah.
Everybody else, I'm just kind of like, meh.
Meh.
But with that being the case, let's go ahead and let's do our final thoughts on this one. Who wants to start us off? Karen?
Okay, so, I couldn't get into the story, but I did like some of like the themes that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Lewis and his wife, whose his wife is white and a vegetarian,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how people at his post office try to put him and Shwani together. And, he talks about how Native Americans try to stay with other Native Americans. They don't go out to like muddy the blood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why him and, PETA decided not to have kids. There was other reasons why they didn't want to have kids.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
she just didn't want to have them to begin
yeah,
with, but
and he agreed with her.
mm-hmm.
It's and then you get into the themes of violence and whatnot, and it is a real eye opening to see that you hear about it. You hear about the rampant violence against Native women, the drug use and the alcoholism. You
Mm-hmm.
hear about it, but then when you read it and you get to see that perspective of it, it hits hard. It
Mhm.
really does. Because to
Yeah.
this day, you have a lot of Native American women disappearing, bodies not being found or bodies being found. Um, but in this story, you had a Native man killing um, the woman he loves and then a woman he believed to be an enemy. That hits kind of hard. Like, I know you believe that this elk woman is here, but you didn't really have to kill people just to prove you were right and or wrong, sir. Gabe's daughter, I hope, if they, did to make a series, I hope she makes something of herself. Because at the end, she told her stepfather, "Don't shoot the elk woman. Let her do what she needed to do." And she paid more respect to the elk woman than some of these guys did, because
Yeah.
she let her do what she needed to do, get her baby from its funeral, its grave. It took me a while to figure that out. Um, so I love that little interaction where it was a woman giving another woman peace,
Yeah.
letting her find her peace.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
the story did not hook me at all. So if I were to rate it, I'll give it 1.5 skulls.
That's fair. Lisa, how about you?
It was definitely a good insight, and it was definitely I like some of the storytelling. So during some of the parts with Lewis, it was a little scattered, but like you said, it may have been from his perspective. That makes more sense now. I do like the elk woman. I like the whole mythology behind that. That was kind of nice. I would have liked to have a little bit more of that in there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I liked the ending with Denora, women rescuing women from,
Yeah.
and that was actually really, that was a really good, I really enjoyed that. That was really honorable. And, I probably wouldn't read it again anytime soon, but maybe I'd read it. I'd give it about like, I'll give it a like three stars, three skulls, not stars. Oh my God. Um, uh, three skulls because of some of the scatteredness and some of uh, and the animal stuff that really kind of got to me. I mean, it really did.
Yeah.
So
Harley, man, Harley.
Harley,
Jesus.
I know.
I
Oh, that
know,
poor puppy.
That poor
I know.
question. What was up with the basketball thing? Like, it was a lot of basketball thing.
You know what? They got their thing. They like their basketball.
Yep.
Let them have basketball. In this
All right.
story, it seemed like everybody loved it. So I'm going to assume that Steven loves basketball.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it. As writers, that's what they do. Is they write what they know. They write what they love. And
Hmm.
I think Steven just happens to be a really big basketball fan.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going to have to give this book a 2.5. I think overall, it's pretty well written. I think there are areas of it that are less well written than other areas, but Stephen is also an up and coming author. So it could just be that this book just isn't his finest work yet. And you know what? Look at Stephen King's novels. Some of his early stuff is not really the best.
Yeah.
But, but also some of his stuff were like coke-filled
Yeah.
Some of
vendors.
his stuff is also, coke-filled, ramblings. Understand. But, I really do think that overall, it's not a horrible read. I do think it is a prime example of eco horror, especially when it's married with folk horror. It is a triggering book. And I think overall, even though it's a great book for what it has, it's not a great horror novel. And I can't push it all the way up to a 3 or higher than that, really. I can maybe do a 2.75, maybe. Simply for the eco horror portion. I could probably bump it up to that. But I think it's a good start. And I would actually love to see more written by Stephen, especially in the horror genre, especially if it does explore more of Native American culture and the stories that they themselves have that can spook us, as long as it's done respectfully, obviously. And since, he has that in, I feel like it could be done really, really well. But listeners, have you read this book? Please tell us if you have. Also, what was your favorite part? Which character did you maybe kind of feel bad for? Is there one that you kind of feel bad for? Obviously, we feel bad for the dogs and other animals that were slain in this story. Thankfully, no animals were actually hurt in the making of said story that we know of. But tell us on our social media. You can find us on all the different things. We are on Instagram, TikTok, X, Threads. Our Facebook group is always pretty cool. You can also subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Apple, Google, Spotify, and we are on YouTube. So drop us some fun little comments over there. We would love to see it. And ladies, where can they find you all at? Lisa?
You can find me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and soon YouTube again.
Karen, where can they find you?
Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, formerly known as Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit.
Rock on. And you can find me, Shannon, on all the different things at Still Tea Wine Media Mind. But before we go, listeners, thank you so much. We really do appreciate all of you coming and listening to the podcast, liking our posts, liking the podcast on all the different things. Please continue to do all that. We really do appreciate your support. So thank you so much. So stay spooky, our lovely little ghouls.
And this has been the Spooky and Kooky Podcast of Earth Station Boo.